Mary I of England, often known as Bloody Mary, remains one of the most controversial and misunderstood monarchs in English history. The daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, Mary ascended to the throne in 1553, following the death of her half-brother, Edward VI. Her reign, which lasted from 1553 until her death in 1558, was defined by her fervent efforts to restore Catholicism in England after the Protestant reforms introduced by her father and furthered under her brother, Edward VI. Mary's rule was marked by religious persecution, political challenges, and the complex legacy she left behind. While her reign was brief, it was one of profound consequence, not just for the religious direction of England, but also for the political landscape of the Tudor dynasty. Mary's tragic personal life, her marriage to the Spanish king Philip II, and the aggressive pursuit of Catholic restoration would cement her as one of the most contentious monarchs in English history. Mary was born on February 18, 1516, to Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. As the first legitimate child of Henry VIII, she was initially regarded as the future Queen of England. However, her status was to be shattered when Henry VIII sought to annul his marriage to Catherine in order to marry Anne Boleyn, a move that eventually led to the English Reformation. The Pope's refusal to grant Henry the annulment resulted in Henry breaking with the Catholic Church and declaring himself the head of the Church of England. As a result of her mother's marriage being annulled and Henry's break with Rome, Mary's position as heir to the throne was weakened. She was declared illegitimate, and her title as Princess of Wales was stripped from her. This early experience of rejection and marginalization would shape Mary's future, as she would spend much of her youth in a complex political and religious environment. Mary's mother, Catherine of Aragon, fought tirelessly to restore her daughter's place in the succession. Despite these efforts, Mary's life was full of personal and public struggles. She watched as her father's marriage to Anne Boleyn produced a son, the future Edward VI, further reducing her own chances of inheriting the throne. Nevertheless, Mary remained determined to restore her Catholic faith and her rightful position. Following the death of her father in 1547, Mary's half-brother Edward VI ascended to the throne. As the son of Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife, Edward was a Protestant, and his reign ushered in significant religious reforms, pushing England further away from the Catholic Church. Mary, a devout Catholic, remained steadfast in her opposition to the Protestant reforms. However, her path to the throne seemed increasingly unlikely, especially after the death of Edward VI in 1553. Upon Edward's death, his advisers, led by John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, sought to prevent Mary from ascending the throne, as they feared she would restore Catholicism. Edward's will named Lady Jane Grey, the granddaughter of Henry VII, as his successor. On the strength of this will, Northumberland secured Jane's ascension to the throne. However, Mary's supporters quickly rallied in her favour, and she was proclaimed Queen in July 1553. Mary's immediate reaction was one of triumph and vindication, but she faced many challenges as a newly crowned monarch. The political climate was unstable, with the Protestant nobility wary of her intentions to restore Catholicism. She faced resistance from the court, the church, and even her own family members, many of whom had embraced Protestantism during the reign of Edward VI. One of the defining characteristics of Mary's reign was her strong commitment to restoring Catholicism in England. Having spent much of her youth in a devout Catholic environment, Mary was determined to undo the religious changes introduced by her father and brother. Her efforts to restore the papacy's authority over England were far-reaching and deeply divisive. In 1554, Mary married Philip II of Spain, the son of Emperor Charles V. The marriage was politically motivated and was intended to solidify England's ties with Catholic Europe. Philip was deeply Catholic, and the union gave Mary the opportunity to strengthen Catholic influence in England. However, the marriage was unpopular with many of her subjects, as it was seen as a subjugation of English sovereignty to Spanish interests. The most controversial aspect of Mary's reign was her decision to persecute Protestants in an effort to re-establish Catholic orthodoxy. Over the course of her 5-year reign, around 280 Protestant reformers, including notable figures like Archbishop Cranmer, were burned at the stake. These executions came to define her reign in the eyes of many, and earned her the posthumous nickname Bloody Mary. The Marian persecutions were part of a broader effort to reinstate Catholic practices and suppress the Protestant Reformation. Catholic bishops were reinstated in positions of power, and the Act of Repeal, 1555, reversed many of the Protestant reforms enacted during the reign of Edward VI. The burning of heretics became a symbol of Mary's determination to restore Catholicism, but it also led to widespread fear and resentment, especially in Protestant communities. While Mary viewed these executions as necessary for the salvation of souls, her actions alienated a significant portion of her population and led to further division within England. The Marian persecutions have remained one of the most debated aspects of her reign. While historians recognize the religious fervor and the political motivations behind these actions, they also acknowledge that the burnings were politically costly and served to exacerbate religious tensions. By the time of Mary's death, the Protestant movement had only grown stronger in England. Mary's reign was also marked by political instability. Though she was a determined monarch, her reign was undermined by several challenges, both domestic and international. Politically, the opposition to her rule grew stronger as her marriage to Philip II of Spain became more contentious. Many Englishmen were suspicious of Philip's influence, and the marriage was seen as a threat to England's independence. These suspicions were further fueled by the fact that Philip had little interest in the governance of England, leading to frustrations on both sides. Economically, Mary faced challenges brought on by the ongoing conflict with France, which had begun during the reign of her father, Henry VIII. The war with France continued under her reign, and in 1557, England entered into a conflict with France that ultimately led to the loss of the port of Calais, which had been an English possession for over 200 years. The loss of Calais was a major blow to Mary's reign and her legacy, as it marked the end of English claims in France and was perceived as a humiliating defeat. Additionally, Mary faced economic difficulties at home. Inflation and food shortages plagued the country, and her attempts to restore the Catholic Church's wealth by reclaiming monastic lands were met with resistance. Her economic policies were not able to remedy the issues that plagued the common people, and many began to question her leadership. Mary's marriage to Philip II of Spain had a profound impact on her reign, both politically and personally. The marriage was seen by many as an alliance with the Catholic powers of Europe and a way to secure the throne for her descendants. However, the marriage was unpopular with many English subjects who resented the foreign influence it brought into England. Philip II's presence in England was limited, and he had little interest in the day-to-day governance of the kingdom. This led to frustrations on both sides. Mary had hoped for a powerful Catholic king to help her in her mission to restore Catholicism in England, but Philip's indifference and absence led to a sense of isolation for Mary. The marriage was never a love match, and Philip eventually returned to Spain in 1555, leaving Mary isolated and without the support she had hoped for. The marriage to Philip also had political consequences. The English people feared that the union would lead to England becoming a vassal state of Spain. Philip's Catholicism, however, further entrenched Mary's commitment to the Catholic Restoration, and his absence allowed her to pursue her religious policies without the interference of her husband. But the marriage remained a political liability, and its unpopularity contributed to the challenges of her reign. Mary the Wise died on November 17, 1558, at the age of 42. Her death was the result of a prolonged illness, and she was succeeded by her half-sister Elizabeth, who would go on to become one of the most iconic monarchs in English history. The religious reforms of Mary's reign were undone almost immediately by Elizabeth, who re-established Protestantism as the official religion of England. Mary's legacy has been the subject of intense debate. Some historians view her as a determined and devout Catholic monarch who sought to protect the souls of her subjects by restoring Catholicism. Others focus on the brutality of the Marian persecutions, which have defined her reign in the popular imagination. The loss of Calais and the political instability of her rule further cloud her legacy. While she was successful in restoring Catholicism for a brief period, the Protestant Reformation in England was ultimately irreversible.